Okay, now we're on to podcast number 2 for chapter 17, and here we're going to take a look at how urine is formed and how the kidneys maintain water balance. Steps of kidney formation actually happens in 3 steps. There's filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. Filtration mainly happens in the glomerulus, and then the reabsorption happens, and then the secretion happens. So we'll take a look at each of these. Filtration is mostly a non-selective passive process, so that means that your blood pressure is helping you to control it, just your natural body process. Pretty much everything that can get out of the blood will. So water, and then anything else that is in your blood that is smaller than a protein will go through the capillary walls. So glucose, extra sugars, amino acids from the breakdown of proteins, ions, and then nitrogenous waste, which is the waste product from the breakdown of proteins. Amino acids are what proteins are made of, so a lot of times you'll get those back later on. Blood cells are too big to pass through the renal tubule into the renal tubule. So remember the parts of the nephron, you have your glomerulus, which are the blood vessels, and then you have the renal tubule where the urine's going to collect. The blood cells cannot get in there. So your blood cells stay in your blood. All of the filtrate that you get is collected into the Bowman's capsule. That is that cap that is going over the top of the glomerulus, and then it connects out to the rest of the renal tubule. And so all of this filtrate is going to go down into the renal tubule. The thing is that a lot of the stuff that's in there we want back. So the second step is called reabsorption. And so several materials that are going to, that have gotten filtered out initially are going to get back into the blood. These things could be water, could be glucose, amino acids, and the various ions, which is very important. We want to get most of our ions back because we're going to need them. Sometimes we have too much glucose in our blood and we will not reabsorb the glucose. And if you have sugar in your urine, that actually can be a sign of a problem with sugar, like diabetes. Some of the reabsorption is passive, so it'll just happen naturally, osmosis and diffusion, but most of it actually happens by active transport. So it's going to take energy to happen. Okay, most of that happens in the proximal tubule, so that is in the first part of the nephron before you get later on. The final part of the proximal tubule where it meets up with the distal is the loop of Henle. And that's going to do the major portion of the reabsorbing of water into the blood, and then the sodium and chloride ions that you're going to need for proper functioning of various systems. Those will get mostly reabsorbed into the loop of Henle. Things that are not going to be reabsorbed. You do not want to get any of your nitrogenous waste products back into your blood. So urea, which happens from the breakdown of amino acids. Uric acid comes from breaking down your RNA, which you break down all the time. And creatine, which is made from when you do your muscle contractions in your muscle system. And any extra water that your blood has will not get reabsorbed. It's going to stay in your urine. Third step is called secretion, and this is basically reabsorption in reverse. So we just put a whole bunch of stuff back into the blood. But some of that stuff we want to get back out, or some stuff we haven't really gotten rid of yet. So this mostly occurs after the loop of Henle in the distal convoluted tubule. Okay, and so we're going to have a little last ditch filtration happening. Some of the materials that are in the capillaries are going to actually move back into the renal tubules. This could be extra hydrogen and potassium ions, some more creatine, and this is where our remnants of certain types of drugs may end up back in there. Materials, anything that is left in the renal tubule is going to move towards the ureter, and it is now your urine. And the ureter will lead down to your urinary bladder, will be stored until you void your urine. Okay, so let's take a look at this whole process here. So here is your glomerulus. The blood comes in. Major filtration happens through the Bowman's capsule. So all of this stuff here is filtered out right away. So pretty much anything that can leaves. Then in the proximal tubule, okay, we're going to get put back into the blood are salts, sodium bicarbonate, water, glucose and amino acids. All sorts of stuff that we might need in our blood is going to go back in. Other stuff that might still be in the blood, it takes longer to filter out. Toxins, so hydrogen ions, can go back into the filtrate. Filtrate follows this path down the loop of Henle. Extra water, if water is needed, it'll go back into the blood. Okay. If it detects we need more salt, sodium and chlorine atoms or ions, those will go back into the blood. Okay, and that'll continue on. Then we get up here to the distal tubule. Okay, and the last bits of things that do not belong in our blood, that's going to go back into the renal tubule. So that's the rest of our toxins and some drugs, and anything else that we might possibly need can still be reabsorbed at this time. What is left is your urine, and even as your urine is moving towards the renal pelvis, where it's going to eventually collect to the ureter, you will continue to reabsorb stuff back into the blood if needed. So your blood is still following here, and it's like if there's still things that is needed, it'll still get reabsorbed back in. Okay, so normally a person will make about 1.2 liters of urine in a day, and it should be about 93 to 97% water. Actually has that yellow pigment from the breakdown of hemoglobin. A protein pigment called urochrome forms when your hemoglobin breaks down. Hemoglobin is the protein that's on your red blood cells, so you can carry oxygen, and it will break down eventually. Urine is usually slightly acidic, pH of around 6. Okay. Specific gravity is very close to water. It actually should have no bacteria in it. It is considered sterile until it leaves your body. And it can be slightly aromatic, and that can depend on the types of things that you've had to secrete out of your blood, depending on what you eat and things like that. Now, another important process for the kidneys is to maintain water balance, and you could see throughout the entire nephron you kept maintaining water balance, but there are other ways that this happens as well. So your water intake has to equal your water output. So however much you take in, you will eliminate, but it will be used along the way. So sources of intake: ingested foods and fluids. You do actually take in quite a bit of water just from eating, but your main source of water intake is your fluid. But water is also produced from various metabolic processes like cellular respiration. One of the waste products of cellular respiration is water. Now, to get rid of some of the extra water that you don't need, we breathe it out. Okay, if you ever breathe onto a mirror, you can see the condensation that forms there. That's from the water. Perspiration is sweat. There's water in your feces. A lot of water gets reabsorbed back into the blood and the large intestines, but whatever's left can be in your feces. And then the main source for eliminating water is your urine. Now, the way your body knows how to do this is it's mostly a hormonal process. Okay, hormones are going to act on that distal tubule. So, and that's where we're going to decide, do we need to keep water or send it back? You have the antidiuretic hormone, which is going to be released, and that's going to help us to not lose too much water. And aldosterone is actually going to help with the reabsorption of sodium ions and then water. And it will get rid of extra potassium ions. So again, your body knows how much it's supposed to have of all of these things. The brain detects this and tells your pituitary gland, which is going to tell the various other glands of your body what we need. The cells in the kidneys and the hypothalamus are going to monitor the water and the solute concentration. So the hypothalamus is in the brain. This kidney can do some of this itself, and it's going to decide what do you need, what needs to happen, and then it will go from there.